Hello and good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you from Livestream.travel here in Honolulu, Hawaii. With me is Dr. Peter Tarlow, joining from College Station in Texas. Peter has been our co-host from the very beginning for this daily update on relevant news interfering with the world of travel and tourism today. Good afternoon, Peter. How's everything in Texas?
Well, we're doing much better. We had a little bit of a snowstorm a few days ago, but it's gone now and we're coming back to good weather. So it's good to speak to you. I'm not quite as jealous of Hawaii as I have been the last few days.
We're talking about snowstorms. Right now, the city of Madrid and literally all of Spain is going through the worst weather anyone can think of. In Madrid, it was less than minus 20 Celsius today.
Yes.
What is a record. And
minus 30 Fahrenheit. So
Fahrenheit, yes.
It's really cold.
Right, and it's very hard in Madrid. Healthcare workers have been seen walking for hours because there's no more bus service right now and subway service, also because of Corona, walking home and to the hospitals so they can relieve their colleagues that are exhausted, because Madrid also had more than 24,000 more Corona cases today, with almost 500 people dying. So there is a double disaster, and that adds actually to the challenge the UNWTO, the World Tourism Organization, has. Currently, the election is posted, is set for Monday and Tuesday next week. And this is not an immediate election. That's an election for 2022. It does so. There's no need at all to have this in a year in advance.
Juergen, let's take a step back. Some people may not know what the UNWTO is. So let's take a step back and just explain the importance of this election and why, how this impacts the world of tourism. Because I think a lot of, you know it and I know it, but lots of people don't know it.
No, and as I said, the UNWTO stands for United Nations World Tourism Organization. It's the organization entrusted on a UN level, and it's a special agency of the United Nations with a little bit more than 150 some members are countries in the world working together in travel and tourism. We have to say that the United States and also the United Kingdom are not members of UNWTO, but
most of the world is.
But most of the world is, and it's under the Obama administration, the United States almost joined. So this may happen now under the new Biden administration again. But the election is very important because it's about the person in charge of this agency and of world tourism. And as, of course, everyone knows on this platform, we in the travel and tourism industry are going through the worst crisis ever. And it's important to have capable people running this organization. So now this election for the 2022 to 2026 period is up for next week. There had been an initiative actually by our World Tourism Network, spearheaded by Dr. Taleb Riffa, who was the Secretary General for 2 terms, and by Mr. Vrangeli, who was the Secretary General the previous terms before Taleb. In addition to this, also endorsed by Professor Jeffrey Lipman, who was the Assistant Secretary General, and by Carlos Vergla, who was the second man in the UNWTO under Taleb Rifai, all urging the current Secretary General, Mr. Zurab, and I'm sorry I cannot pronounce his last name, he's from the Republic of...
That's really all that matters.
Yeah, from the Republic of Georgia, to agree a postponement of this process, but he disagrees. And the bad part is we're all on a Zoom world, so it should be easy to say, okay, let's have this election virtually. But Mr. Zurab insisted, and there is some kind of a stature in the UNWTO, that this election has to be done in person. So ministers of tourism are expected to travel to Madrid.
So this is really the hard part, is that 1, they can't get to Madrid because the airport's closed. 2, they could get to Madrid, they couldn't get out of their hotel. The country, it's 25 below zero. It's over a meter, over 2 to 3 feet of snow have now fallen in Madrid. And in the middle of this, we're having an election that's not necessary. And that really impacts tourism because it impacts the relations between the tourism industry and the airline industry and the travel industry and the cruise industry. And so it seems like a very esoteric topic at first you're bringing, but in reality, this touches every part of the UN and how it impacts tourism, especially in those countries that are developing tourism, such as in Asia or in Africa, that really need the help of the United Nations. So your point is very well taken.
I mean, the entire reason behind is not that UNWTO will be without leadership, but it's about a re-election for the second term for the current Secretary General Zurab. He doesn't want competition, obviously. He hates competition. And he didn't expect anyone would actually be able to sign up because after they made this decision to move the election from May to January, he didn't expect anyone would have the deadline could and apply for it till November of last year. 7 countries actually tried. Only 1 was accepted. 6 of them made minor mistakes, and the secretariat of the UNWTO kicked those people out. I know one was a very angry gentleman from Senegal, who is now raising his voice and said he should have been accepted. But the only one who actually made it was from Bahrain. This is Her Excellency Mai Al Khalifa. She was or is the current Minister of Culture in Bahrain, and she has been trying very hard to campaign. She actually is in Madrid, and I had a chance to talk to her assistant this morning. She's devastated because she doesn't have winter clothes, and all the shops are closed in Madrid because of Corona. But the main problem...
She's in a hotel, but she can't get out of the hotel.
Well, apparently she's trying. She came there on the private jet. I guess the government from Bahrain paid for a private jet to get her to Madrid. And she has been visiting embassies because embassies are allowed to vote and send their ambassadors physically. But unfortunately, not every country out of the 35 countries that are voting, these are the executive council members, have embassies in Madrid. So there are few countries with embassies, and the Sheikha apparently visited these embassies in the last few days when she managed to get to them, maybe walking for hours. I don't know how she did it, or maybe take a sled. But today we got a little bit of good news, and I really honestly feel sorry for her. Not even talking about her qualifications that I'm sure are there, but also about what she has to go through. She seems to be a very strong woman, and she's actually the first woman running for Secretary General. But I have to say, I felt quite relieved when her campaign told me today that they actually feel they have the majority of the countries. And so this is good news. If they have the majority of the countries that can get to the election and vote, it's a good sign, because I think no matter what you think, how qualified or not qualified a candidate is, if someone can push for such a fraud in a re-election, he or she shouldn't be in charge. And this is really what Zurab has been doing. He's been pushing not to move this election so he can win.
I think the real issue is we're talking about, just like there was a big issue in the United States, you shouldn't have censorship. People should be able to get their point out. You may agree with the point or you may disagree with the point, but you should be able to know the point. And that's an issue that I think is really going to be important around the world, not only in tourism, but in everything we do. And if people are censored, if they're unable to say what they believe, then we have some really major problems around the world, some of the worst problems since the 1940s. So I think you're really hitting a very important level. Tourism cannot succeed if we have censorship. Tourism needs a free flow of information and a free flow of people.
No, absolutely, Peter. I agree with you. And I have to admit, no matter where you stand in the current really dangerous situation we're going through in our own country, and how you stand in regards to our current president, it has nothing to do, we should not stop people from saying what they wanted to say. I completely disagree for Twitter, Facebook, and Amazon to cut people off from their network because they're saying something they may not like. However, where do we define the borders on this? If you go to Twitter and say, can you help me to kill this person? Is this a message you should be able to say?
Of course. And what's really fascinating is that Twitter today lectured to the people of Uganda that they should not interfere in political campaigns and political elections, when Twitter very much interferes with political campaigns. But maybe this will take us to the other topic we wanted to talk about, and that is not only the free flow of information, but also the free flow of people. And that leads to the whole question of, many of us are getting vaccinated. Yesterday, we talked about the fact that I had my first vaccine, and I'm looking forward in the beginning of February getting my second vaccination. And then 10, 12 days later, I should be able to travel where I want to travel because I will have been vaccinated. The question is, some countries will say you can come in, and some countries are going to say, without showing that you've been vaccinated, we don't want you to come in. And that's really an issue. Does a country have the right to say, without being vaccinated, you can't come in? What do you think? Because I think that's really an interesting concept we need to talk about a little bit.
Well, I think a country should be able to determine this. A country has an obligation to its citizens. And I can see it here. I don't live in an independent country, but I live in the state, Hawaii, what is far away from the rest of our own country. So it's almost like an independent country.
Yes.
I don't, honestly, as much as I love tourism, and I've been in this industry for 40 years and more, I don't want people to come in here that could be considered a threat to our health system.
Threat to the health.
Yes, I think there should be regulations. There should be exceptions to this regulation. So some people may not be able to get the shot. We cannot not allow people who have health reasons, or maybe small children that simply cannot get the shot, not to be able to travel. But people who are healthy and could get the shot and simply don't want to get the shot, I think there is there's a fine line.
Yes, there is. And I think one of the ways that that could be handled is, a lot of places, of course, have regulations. If you want to come in, you have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. So if you want to travel and with the shot, be our guest. If you don't want to take the shot, of course, you have two options. One is stay home. But the other option is, if you do travel to a place, then you have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine to make sure, and have a negative test to make sure that you're okay. There's a lot of fear of this vaccine. I'm not sure why, because it's not like, say, the smallpox vaccine many years ago when I was a child, and they put a small amount of the disease into you to make you immune. This is just basically working with the proteins in your body. There's no COVID in the COVID vaccine. And so it's absolutely safe. Now, of course, the media has, some parts of the media have made a big deal of one or two people who have reactions. But I can tell you, I can give you an aspirin and you can have a negative reaction. But most people are not afraid to take an aspirin. And one of the big problems we have to deal with is showing people that millions of people now have had this vaccine, and so few people have had a reaction. It's kind of like taking an aspirin. So yes, breathing takes a risk. Walking down the street is a risk. We cannot live in a risk-free society. And one of the risks we need to work on is not to be afraid to take this vaccine, because it's going to make us all, give us herd immunity and make the world finally conquer COVID-19, which is something we desperately need to do.
Yeah, Peter, of course, there is another issue. I know there is a discussion currently with Qantas Airlines, the airlines for Australia,
Yes.
of putting restrictions on passengers, or not allowing passengers to board their flight without the vaccine. Now, the vaccine has been given to so few people. I think it's really too early. But then again, should we just mandate for people not to travel till they get the vaccine? Or should we say if a certain percentage were able to get the vaccine, we put these rules in place? How should we handle this? What do you think?
Well, I think one of the things we can do is, a lot of airlines won't let you get on without a negative test. So one of the things we could say is, either you prove you've had the vaccine, or immediately. And we now have testing that can be done almost before you get on an airline, that say within an hour or 2 hours, you have to take a test and show that you're negative before you get on a plane. Because there's the ethical issue. If you get on a plane with COVID, you could get half the plane sick. And, you know, that's not fair. So if you haven't been vaccinated, I think you have to prove you have a negative test.
Yeah, and that comes to another piece of news. What came out is the mandate by the CDC that as of, I believe, January 26th, everyone arriving in the United States from a foreign country need to have a test within 3 days before arrival. That's kind of the same rule we had in place here for Hawaii since October 15th.
I don't know why it took this long to do it. The CDC should have done this 3 months ago. I mean, or in March of last year. I mean, it seems to me you don't have people come into your country who have an infectious disease and are going to get people sick. It seems to me this is a real failure on the part of the CDC, that no one should be allowed in the United States or Canada or whatever country it is. I couldn't go to Canada if I were positive. I couldn't go to Canada without a COVID vaccine. The United States should be doing the same. I don't know why we don't do it.
Yeah, and then of course we're such a big country, and I don't know how you think we should handle it for domestic flights into Hawaii. There is a rule; it has been in place for a while. Should this rule be in place for flights from coast to coast, to Alaska, to Puerto Rico, or wherever people wanted to go?
My answer would be yes. My answer is if you don't have a negative test, you shouldn't be allowed to get on a plane. Period. That simple. Because it's an enclosed space. You don't have your own space. If I'm in a car by myself, I'm not getting you sick. But we're sharing everything on a plane, from the lavatories to people putting their mask on, not putting their mask on to eat, to breathing air. I should not be put in an environment that's unsafe. And so it seems to me, if you don't have, I think Emirates Airlines does the same, right? That you have to have a negative test in order to be able to get on the plane. And if you don't, either be vaccinated or get the test. If not, drive or don't go, swim to Hawaii. But, and Hawaii won't let you in anyway without the test. So it makes sense to me. I think this is part of responsible travel. And that's really a key issue that I think for tourism to survive, it has to show it's responsible.
Peter, I fully agree. We're over our time already.
We wanted
to, but it was an interesting discussion. Lots going on in the world, and we do this again tomorrow.
I look forward to it. You have a good evening.
You too, and anyone who wanted to see this after we stop broadcasting it on eTurbo News or Livestream live, you can actually go to livestream.travel and watch this one, and also watch all the different videos we did a few days ago. Thank you very much, and aloha and good night.
Have a good evening, y'all. Bye-bye.